All right, a critical question. Should you own it by leasing or renting? What in the world am I talking about? I'm talking about lots of money, your hard-earned money, and we're going to clear it all up for you today on The Current Temp. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this interesting episode about what to do with your money when it comes to homes and cars. I am joined today by my frequent contributor, Mr. Bill Gerner, one of the owners and partners at EMC Equity Management Company. And before we get right into it, let's thank our sponsors, Lexus of Memphis. As you know, we're huge fans, and that's not just because they're a part of the show. It's because they make a great product, and they have fantastic customer service. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Great customer service. And a big thanks to EMC Equity Management Company. You can get more information on what we do and get free advice, free questions answered. All you got to do is go to emctn.com. All right, today's question. When it comes to houses and cars, should you own it? Should you lease it? Should you rent it? Okay, all those things tie in together. So let's start with houses, buying versus renting. Now, Bill, I've made a list of things to think about when you're buying a house. I'm going to run through a few of them, and I want you to comment as we're going. All right, if you're thinking about buying a house, here's some pros. Now, we're going to talk about houses first and then renting an apartment. Should you buy a house? Should you rent an apartment? If you're thinking about buying a home, one of the biggest factors to me is you're going to definitely build equity.
That's correct. And usually over time, you'll get a lot of that money back. Don't you think so?
Well, yes. And really what really chaps me, what gets my motor running is I feel like when you're renting, and I've rented before, you're just throwing that money away. I wish back when I was renting, I remember thinking, what's this money going towards? I could be paying a house note and building equity because I own it. It's like investing in yourself. So to me, that's probably the biggest reason to buy a house.
Well, you know, I was fortunate when my wife and I got married. I didn't even have a job when I was engaged, and but I wanted to get married, so I went and found a job. But we got enough money to get a down payment on the house. We never went into an apartment, and I didn't know what in the world I was doing. But after about 3 years, we built up some equity, and we traded up. I just said, this is pretty neat. Maybe you haven't experienced something like that.
But before we get into my experience, did you know that he didn't have a job when he got engaged? That's the first time I'd heard that. Did you know that? So you got engaged without having a job. That was your wife made a big bet on you.
I had my priorities right, though.
Yeah, you know, when we got married, we had just decided, okay, let's buy our first house. So we very small starter home, but we knew we needed to start somewhere small just to begin building that equity because it's really the best way to accrue money. Real estate, one of the better investments when it comes to how your money matures over time. I've heard you say that in the past.
All right. What was the difference between, you said you rented, were you in an apartment before what were the differences you could probably point out?
Here's what I did, and my buddy was smart. My buddy bought a house, and I paid him rent to live in it. Well, of course, what's he doing? He's applying that towards his note. Looking back, the brilliant move on his part. Right. I helped pay his house note. That's how that went. You brought up a couple of these other positive things to think about. If you're thinking about buying a home, you got a predictable monthly payment. Once you negotiate what your interest rate is, you know what you're going to pay. You will need money for a down payment and closing costs. And if you're a first-time home buyer, the U.S. government actually gives you some incentives to help you do that. I believe that you only have to put down 10%. Is that right? Does that sound right? Because the kids just went through this. I believe if you're a first-time home buyer, you need a 10% down payment. After that, you need a 20%. I'm just going.
That's correct.
That sound right? Okay.
Yeah.
And if you do buy a home, you got to maintain it. Now, that's one thing that can be problematic, especially if you've never owned a home. You got to cut the grass, which means you need a lawnmower. You got to paint it occasionally. There's upkeep, but that's all part of the deal.
Right. Well, you know, the other thing is if you currently own a home and you have a real low mortgage, it's really no need to pay it off. Because if you have a 2 or 3% mortgage, note on that house, if you have any extra money, you need to put it somewhere to work for you, the market, bonds, or whatever. But, you know, you can make more money doing that than you can paying extra on that house.
I just left a meeting with a new client to come tape this. We had that exact conversation.
You did?
She came into money. She was asking, do I pay off my house? Her note is low enough, her interest rate is low enough that we said, well, if you can invest it and make more than what your interest rate is, you're better off investing it and using that money to pay the note. Most people think I got to pay the house off automatically, and that's not always the case.
That's right. I mean, and also if you're a woman, a single woman or a widow, you know, you talked about maintenance. I think that's hard on them because you have to get the right vendors and keep people from taking advantage of you on the maintenance. And so I think in certain cases like that, it's probably good to rent. We had a client coming in from Atlanta, and she said, I want to get a house. And we said, no, let's get you an apartment first where you can kind of learn what area of town you want to live in and everything. And in Atlanta, she had a house, and we put her in a nice apartment, and she said, I love this. No maintenance,
super
no
easy.
worries.
Yeah.
And but the only bad thing is what you kind of mentioned. Your rent does go up at the end of your lease.
Okay.
99% of the time.
See, that's a great segue. So now I've gone to things to consider when you're renting an apartment. Bill just mentioned usually it's a short-term commitment. You know, with a house, it's yours. It's yours until you sell it. But with an apartment, you can usually get it in with a year and a half. The landlord handles all the repairs. That's something to think about is, like you said, for that client, she didn't have to mess with anything. If something breaks, they will normally come in and fix it. You don't have a yard to maintain, so you don't have to keep up with a lawnmower, weed whacker, and doing all that business. That is a lot of work. So an apartment does give you greater flexibility. So there's two flips of the coin there, house versus apartment. So buying a house, all right, we talked this through. It might be a better choice if you plan on living in that house 5 to 7 years. If you have stable income, if you know you're going to have recurring income to make the note. If you have that down payment, keep in mind, you can't walk in to buy a house with nothing. You've got to have a down payment. You've got to have closing costs, and you really need a little extra to repair things because that's going to happen. And as Bill just said, if you're comfortable with maintenance. To wrap up, house versus apartment, any closing thoughts on that one?
I think in most cases, if you can possibly get into a house, it would benefit you financially, and also you don't have to put up with people real close to you not following the rules. I'll just mention my sister. She has a house, and she hires the worst vendors in the world because she gets somebody to fix something, and the next thing we know, she's hiring the next group to come in and fix what they messed up.
Right.
So I think, women have a harder time, but I think if you're married and you can get in a house, it's the best thing to do because you will build up equity over time, and you will get a lot of those payments back when you sell the house and move up or whatever you do.
I agree with Bill on this one. If you can make it happen, go for buying the house because even if you're maintaining it, you're building up equity, and they do appreciate it.
But Joey, what about, you were in a house, what about raising kids in an apartment and house? That's got to be a big one.
Listen, that's a great point is if you're going to have kids or if you have a dog, having a yard is a big deal. Having a place for friends to come over and sit out in lawn chairs or have a cookout, those kind of, like when you're in an apartment, the apartment may provide a grill. I've seen those are usually not that great, but you can't have a grill in an apartment. You can't put one on the patio or the balcony. They don't allow that. So you got a lot more flexibility, even with a small starter home. A small starter home gives you room. If you have kids, they've got some room to grow, and then you upgrade as you go along. So I agree.
And the landlords, they're supposed to fix things, but do they always do that in a timely manner?
Sometimes that's a battle. I mean, there's pros and cons to both. All right, good food for thought. Now let's go to a car. And I've been down this road either way. I know Bill has as well. Should you buy or lease? And I will tell you, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of buying versus leasing. But a lot of it comes down to what are the interest rates like, at the time that you're doing it. There have been times in the past where I think it made more sense to lease at first, then buy. But those times have changed. So let's talk about buying a car versus leasing a car. If you want to buy it, here's some things to think about. Usually it's going to be a lower cost over the long term, okay, because you get some value out of it. You get to keep the car forever as long as you want it. No mileage restrictions. That's an issue because there are mileage restrictions when you lease, and you do have to pay for repairs. But on the lease side, you get a lower note. Usually the car dealership will fix anything under warranty. There are mileage limits. You have like so many miles a year you can drive, and if you go over that, they charge you per mile. And at the end of that lease, you do have to either turn it in or buy it. So you're talking about, to me, two different lifestyles. People that like to lease often like having a new car. They want a low note, and they don't care about tomorrow. I'll worry about that later. When you buy, it's kind of like buying a house. You get that, you own it, and when you sell it, even though it's going to depreciate, it's kind of the opposite of a house, you've at least got some equity in it. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think when you turn that car in, if there's wear and tear in excess of what the contract says, you're going to pay a lot of money. You're going to pay more money out. There's also, could be in that lease, which I don't think anybody reads, hidden fees. Like when you turn it in, there could be a fee. You probably may have to put up a deposit. I'm kind of talking about the negatives, and I think those are real negatives. If you get a scratch on that car, and if you buy insurance on that car, you usually have to take out more than you normally would because it's a leased car. So those are the disadvantages. But I think I'll go back to the widow again. If you are a woman and you're by yourself and you're driving out of town or you're driving the city, you do want a car that's reliable. And if you have the money, then I think it may be okay to lease because you do not want the car to break down. You do not want to go to repair shops, and you kind of keep the car new. But it's really an extra expense. If at all possible, I think it's better to buy a car and be the owner of that car, and where when you do have it paid off, you get some extra years without paying the note. And over the long term, I think it's a lot less expensive than leasing.
See, we're going to agree again. I have leased in the past when it made sense financially because of interest rates to pay a low note, and then we bought it. Then we bought that vehicle. But that time has changed. I think now it makes more sense to buy new or used, find a good used vehicle, because I think there's, like you said, I think there's more benefit to owning the vehicle. And once it's paid off, you can drive. People are driving cars much longer now because all the car prices have gone up so much. So I've read a report where the used cars and the age of cars has exploded because people just can't afford new cars. And so we're fixing them, keeping them longer. But man, it is nice when you get to a point where you don't have a car note.
Yeah.
It may not be a new car, but it's running and I don't have a note. I think that's worth it.
And I think this whole podcast is about affordability, which we hear in the news all the time. Well, if you can buy a house, that monthly payment, you're going to make money off that over time, and it's going to be a lot cheaper than renting. If you can buy a car, new or used, it's going to benefit you over time financially. That's just the facts. And people can say what they want to, but a car company's not going to lease you a car if they are not making money.
No.
It's not going to happen.
No, and listen, let's recap with this. What you're really getting here, friends, is you got two dads here. He's a dad, I'm a dad. This is the advice we would give our kids, and hopefully this is helpful to you as well. It's things to talk about when it comes to home ownership, car ownership, renting, leasing, buying. I think in both cases, our suggestion would be if you can swing it, buy, because you're able to build equity. You have some ownership there, and when it comes time to sell, there is a value that you own in it that can be paid back to you.
That's right.
You agree with that?
I agree wholeheartedly.
All right, let's recap the car deal. Now, when should you buy a new car with a lease? It's when you want a new car all the time and you want a low note. If that's what you want, lease it. If that's your main thing, I just want a new car all the time and a low note, you're not going to own it. You're going to have to turn it back in, lease. If you want to build equity and own the vehicle, I think it's time to buy. In the back of my head, though, and this is going to sound terrible, but I'm just going to say it. I'll use myself as an example. If I'm leasing a high-end, let's say a Ferrari, and driving around because I want people to see me in a Ferrari, but I'm leasing it, I'm not really impressing anybody because I don't own it. It's almost like I'm just borrowing it to show off. Right. And to me, that's not worth the payoff of, I'd rather have a much, less flashy car that works well, that I own, that I can eventually get to a point where I don't have a note on it, because I don't care if you're driving a Corvette or a Chevette, they're both getting you from A to B, right? No matter how expensive the vehicle is, the bottom line is, can it get me from here to Kroger and back, right? It doesn't have to be air-conditioned luxury leather surround sound. If it gets me back and forth, everything else is just kind of bells and whistles.
Right.
I'm going off topic a little bit, but I'm less flash and more about what's in my pocket at the end of the day.
Right. Well, and you know, we talked about this. We just read an article. I'm getting off script too.
Go ahead.
About Walmart.
Yeah.
That they're lowering the price of their groceries.
Talk about that.
And I think you can easily save 15 to 25% at Walmart. And I know it's a hassle with all the people in the crowds in the big store, but it's really a money saver on groceries.
Listen, I just read, and like or not like our administration, part of the reason they're lowering prices is that the White House is pressuring retailers to lower the price on things like meat and essentials because inflation has gotten so out of control. I was impressed. I saw that one of the things Walmart is doing, as a guy who drinks the occasional Coke Zero, the price of a soda has gone up ridiculous, where it's like between $10 and $15 a 12-pack. And Walmart is one of the ones that is lowering that like by almost half. And I'm a diet soda drinker. Water, by the way, water is your best bet. I'm not telling people get sugary drinks. I do agree, though, we do have an affordability issue. You know, we talked a lot about this when we were on the radio. That's something I'm hoping inflation will get under control.
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
I think it will. I think it's going to take more time. It's easy for inflation to go up, but it's a lot harder to bring it down. It takes more time.
Yeah.
And I think it will come down. I think we've got to get this war with Iran over with and get the energy straight, because gasoline, as you know, or oil is used every day for multi things. And if that price comes down, I think everything else will follow somewhat.
Yeah, hey, friends, we'll wrap it up with this. We know that those prices are high, but we also know that there are options out there. If you don't have to buy a new car, you can fix that old one. And there are going to be cheaper prices at the grocery store coming very, very soon. As we've been saying, if you've got questions, we want to answer them. One of the places you can go is to emctn.com. There's a place there to submit a financial question. You can also email us right here at the show if you want to. It's thecurrenttemp@gmail.com. But we will continue to answer those questions for you and bring you some updates right here. Closing thoughts?
I do. I think what we've talked about is important, and I think we give people things to think about. But I think the main thing is look at the pros and the cons, because not everybody fits in a box. So you've got to look at your situation, what's good for you, and you have to either lease it or buy it. Right. It's whatever's good for you. I don't know all the answers, just without talking to the person. And I know everybody wants a house, and I do think that housing, the interest rates will come down. It's going to take a little more time. But I do think they're doing everything possible to bring interest rates down where people can get in houses. But I just would say to everyone, please look at the pros and cons, the costs and the numbers. And we have a lot of people that don't, a lot of women their husband died or they're single, that they don't have anyone to talk to. So these are the type issues that we would cover with someone like that.
Yeah, hey, friends, we know that every single situation is unique. Everybody is different, as Bill just said. It's not one size fits all. We're talking in broad strokes just to help educate and give you some ideas. But we know that every situation is different for every family out there. So like he just said, we hope that you're getting a little bit more information that you can weigh both sides before you make these critical decisions, because houses and cars are two of the most important things you do.
That's exactly right. And I'm going to, we did a podcast on this, but that $1,000 per kid born, that's in effect now, the Trump savings account.
Yep.
And that's worthwhile for people to get involved in that if they have a child.
Well, I think we might need to do an update on that. That may be a future show.
Okay.
Talking about exactly that the Trump.gov accounts are active. Kids can get $1,000 free to invest if they're born in a certain time frame. So I think that may be coming up in the next week or two. We ought to cover that and give them an update on what to do.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. All right, friends. Listen, thank you guys for tuning in. Send us your questions. You can go to emctn.com. Go by to your Lexus dealership. Tell them Bill and Joey said hi, and we will see you here next week.